Money Show.
Personal Finance with Warren Ingram.
Warren and friends this evening because we've decided to go easy on Warren for once. He's such a hard-working young man as our Warren that we thought we'd get a couple of other people in. But I think, Warren, we can agree, can we not, on the Money Show, brought to you by ABSA CIB, committed to empowering the continent's sustainable future at the 2024 Africa Energy Forum, ABSA being a registered FSP. We can agree, Warren, after that brief interlude, that without savings, the country goes nowhere, right?
Absolutely right, Bruce.
Excellent. Good. I'm so glad. Thank you, Warren Ingram with Galileo Capital. No, you paused, so I interrupted. Sorry. Elucidate.
So it's probably the biggest thing that can drive an entire country forward is having a culture of savings, and the countries that do it well drive themselves and their population forward, and those that do it badly end up in deep shtuchas later in life.
Why, though, do countries with higher savings rates, individual savings rates, outperform those that don't have that?
The core reason, I think, is simple regulation. The countries that save better are actually forced by their governments to do so. It's not. I always think smoking is kind of a great analogy. You know, we can't say nowadays that we're uninformed if those who start smoking at the age of 16 believe that it's good for them. That's not true. So we do things that are bad for us. That's human nature. And the only way that we save more and save sufficiently is if governments say, when you start earning a salary or any work, any money from any kind of work, a portion of that must be paid to your long-term savings. The moment you start to do that, you create a culture of saving and you create a positive cycle. But asking people to do it voluntarily never works.
Right. So, Warren, if I was to push you and make you do just one small thing, you've got half an hour as president of the country. You've got the Blue Light Brigade at your disposal. Instead of going for a joyride around Pretoria, you can implement one thing. What would it be?
I think we would follow the examples of countries like Singapore, and we would create a law that says employers, whether they're paying people for an hourly work or daily work or monthly, doesn't matter. They must take a portion of the money that would have been allocated to the person and put it into a long-term retirement vehicle for that person that can only be accessed at their age 55 or later. The moment we do that, I think we can start a very virtuous circle for our country and our people in it.
Forced savings never popular, particularly with a union movement, as we have it in South Africa. The union movement, of course, behind the moves to get our dual pension system going in South Africa. Not everybody's very comfortable with that. Is this something that would fly in your mind, to your mind, or is it just one of these things that is necessary and just has to be done?
It has to be done, and you know, the interesting thing about the unions is that they resisted this two-part retirement reform in the beginning, and here it is. And you know, unions are not sort of an economic answer to all questions, and in this one, we just need to look globally at what really works and stop the ideology and just do the things that absolutely get the country going. You can hear I'm trying not to use rude words here, Bruce, but this is such a simple thing to do. And we can do it gradually. We can say you take 1% of everybody's earnings in year one, 2% in year two, and gradually increase it. Everybody would buy into the concept of getting ourselves to financial freedom over a period of time. People who resist it have a different agenda, and it's ideological or whatever it is. But you know, the good of the country requires us to do things that are not always popular in the short term, but might be very, very valuable in the long term. And this is one of them.
Unlike, of course, the toll roads around Joburg, where the rates were imposed at extraordinarily high levels, if they'd been done at around a gantry, I think it may have flown. You don't put people under unnecessary pressure, but you do. You go through a process of education, I suppose, and forced savings, and you start to create a new kind of thinking.
If we could, one of the things we would do in a regulatory environment like that, if I'm still president for the day, is I would, institute that and then.
No, you've only got half an hour. So you've got to work fast.
I'm going faster. I would implement something similar to what we've done with tax-free savings accounts, which is to say, if you want to participate as a product provider, here are the rules. You can provide this retirement product as well, but the costs need to be 0.5% a year. There's no upfront fees. There's no penalties. There's no exits or performance fees or anything. The investment needs to be simple, transparent, and certainly long-term. And so you grow the savings culture, but you do it in a fair and responsible way for everybody who wants to participate from a product provider point of view. But you don't give a choice to people who have to save. They must be obliged to do it. We don't always like eating our vegetables at supper when we're kids, but somewhere along the line we realize it's good for us. And I think this is the financial equivalent.
Warren Ingram, who is an executive director at Galileo Capital, is a certified financial planner. He gets 15 minutes off this evening for good behavior. Thank you, Warren Ingram. We'll chat to Maya Fischer-French in a moment. She's standing by.
The Money Show. Personal finance.
To Maya Fischer-French we go. We've made her president for the next half hour. You've got those 30 minutes, Maya, to do something extraordinary when it comes to South Africans' ability to save and invest for the future. What is that one thing, that small thing that you do that fundamentally shifts the future for the country?
I would make it so much easier to save rather than borrow. I recently opened an investment account. I thought in the end they were going to ask me for a DNA test. The complications of trying to invest versus literally I could probably sit here on my computer now and borrow 300,000 Rand, in seconds, okay? And if you think about it, if you take out an investment, you have to get a professional advisor. The advisor must be registered with the FSCA. They must do a needs analysis, otherwise they get fined. But if I want to borrow 300,000 Rand, no problem, even though it's committing me to a very serious and very onerous contract. I think we have got it horribly wrong. And, Bruce, I work with consumers all the time. And let me tell you, short-term unsecured debt is actually killing them. And I think we've got this model totally and utterly upside down, and it's resulting in, I was listening to Warren, listening to him eating vegetables. Sometimes you have to eat vegetables, but I think we have a serious savings crisis in South Africa, and that is driven by the fact that the credit industry is sucking up most of the funds that would normally be available for saving.
So, one of the reasons why we've got all these bloomin' hoops and why it is so difficult to invest is because there have been so many snake oil salesmen and so many charlatans selling absolute garbage in an unregulated fashion, investing like the lawn salesman, what was his name, and the guy who's in jail now for ripping people off in his trust last year. These crooks are all around us, and they design their businesses to fleece us, even in the highly regulated environment in which we operate. How do we do this in a way? How do we make it easier without making it also easier for the crooks to rob us?
Well, I think your point is that there's always going to be crooks, there's always going to be unethical people. So we've got to educate people around, and of course greed is the big problem, right? The people who get caught in those are people who think that, 20%, I'm not happy with my 10%, I'm going to go for the 20%. So obviously there needs to be education around that, because no amount of regulation, as we can clearly see, is ever going to stop the scamsters. But I think also what we need to do is we also need to look at how do we create a mindset around this. So if I look at how a credit score is, if you want to buy a house one day, first of all, you have to go and you must take out a store card and a credit card, and you've got to keep taking credit in order to one day buy a house. So what if we changed that and we said a person needs to have a savings account before they can take credit? You have to have a savings account and pay in a monthly amount each month. Now, it could be, obviously, we can make it low-risk environments and all the rest of it and protect it. We can make it perhaps, approved funds that perhaps National Treasury approves because they've kicked the tires, or FSCA. But you need to have that, and you need to contribute to it every month for a year and not touch the funds before we give you credit. We need to start thinking, I think, fundamentally differently, Bruce, about the whole model, the whole financial model.
And also making it cheaper, making it more affordable to do here too, Maya.
Absolutely. And there is, it has become a lot more affordable. Certainly, you can now invest for 50 Rand a month. You think of people like Satrix or the EFTs that have come out. Certainly, it is a lot more affordable. And one of the things that we are actually seeing from a bank's perspective is we're starting to see higher interest rates for lower balances. Some of the banks are actually offering up to 7%, for smaller balances to be saved. So I think that's going to be a very positive move. But I think it is generally just a mindset, and there's a very strong correlation between an increase in consumer access to consumer credit and a decrease in savings, in a savings environment. We see it globally. We see it especially in emerging markets where we start seeing that credit. And a lot of people, I was speaking to a young woman, Bruce, who had started working. She got herself into a lot of debt. And she said, I was living at home. I suddenly had 5,000 Rand extra every month. And she said the bank offered me 50,000 Rand a credit facility. So, instead of saving the 5,000 Rand a month, she said, I'll use that to repay the debt. I think that's the challenge. It's not just about, about making it easy. It's also just about the mindset. I would just love it that the first engagement you got as a young person earning your first salary was a bank saying to you, you know what, open this savings account, start saving a deposit towards your home one day. Instead of saying, guess what, we can give you 50,000 Rand today and you'll just pay for it for the rest of your life. So I think that is what I would love to see, and I would definitely like to be president for half an hour to do that, Bruce.
I think that would be a noble goal. I think we should give everybody who's contributed to the Money Show a turn to do it. Half an hour at a time. You can't do too much damage in half an hour, can you? Oh yeah, Des van Rooyen was finance minister for about half an hour. That was chaos. Gugu Sidaki standing by at Wealth Creed, wrapping up personal finance and the Money Show for this auspicious Tuesday evening, looking for just one thing, from smart people to fundamentally change the future for good.
Bruce is on the Money Show.
To Gugu Sidaki we go at Wealth Creed. You've got the hard job here, Gugu, because you've got to come up with something slightly different in terms of how we change the future for good by changing our approach, attitudes. I don't know. What is it that you want to change if you're president for half an hour to improve the future?
Hello, Bruce. No pressure. But I agree wholeheartedly with what Warren and Maya said. I'd want to take it a few steps before what they've said and say, and if I was president for 30 minutes, I'd mandate financial education for everyone. So I'd make it compulsory for everybody between the ages of 7 and 65 to go through some sort of financial education. And to ensure that you know exactly the ins and outs of interest rates, of investments, of debt, all of those things that affect your personal income. And I'd actually write that into law.
Yeah, and Frank Magwegwe was doing the same thing as well. And just explain your thinking around it, because I think together it provides a far stronger foothold as an idea.
Yeah, so I would ensure that we get all the clever people, so to speak, in the room, the economists, the accountants, the personal finance experts, everybody who works with money in some sort of way, and for us to put a curriculum together that's end to end, that would help people sort of piece together all these mysterious pieces that people puzzle pieces that people seem to be struggling with. Because, it's in the stats, right? So only 40% of South Africans are financially literate. And there is a direct link between your level of financial education and your financial wellness. And that's a global study that's been done. So there's a link between your level of financial education and your level of indebtedness. How much you save, which is to Bruce's point, and how susceptible you are to falling to scams, and whether you invest for the future and you're actually financially secure in the future. So it's actually in our country's best interest to ensure that all the citizens of the country are financially educated.
Here's the thing, though. You tell people that they need to do this, and they go, oh, yes, we definitely need that. Then you provide a podcast free of charge, 3 minutes of personal finance tips every week, and nobody wants it. You put it out into the internet, and it's a really hard thing to get people to engage in. Everyone says they want it. You've really got to somehow force it. And it's that whole analogy of taking the horse to water, but you cannot make it drink. And that's, I suppose... But everyone wants financial freedom, but nobody's prepared to work for it, which is which I think is a big stumbling block in our mindset.
True, but to Warren's point earlier, you kind of need to force people to do these things if you really want to affect the change. So in our industry, we've got what's called CPD points, so continuous professional development points. So in order for you to keep up with your designation, to be able to use the CFP mark, you need to attend a certain number of seminars and the like to make sure that you're still up to date with the goings on of the industry. I would say we need points as citizens, right? Financial education points. We could call them continuous citizen development points, where everybody needs to prove in some way or another that they've gone through the adequate training for the year.
Okay.
They still know how to budget. They still understand the effects of interest rates on their investments and on their debt. They still understand the difference between dividends, between capital growth, and the various tax implications of that. And I think that's the only way to effect the change, to enforce it.
Fabulous. Gugu Sidaki, thank you very, very much indeed at Wealth Creed.